Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your host, Jason Mefford.
And I'm Kathy Gruver. Welcome to today's show, where we are going to be talking about self-care. Now, Jason, I know this doesn't apply to you at all. You eat perfectly, you exercise every day, you stretch, you've got an amazing diet. So I know, we don't even need to address this for ourselves, clearly.
Oh, no, yeah. No. Yeah, I never eat more than I should. I never eat, unhealthy processed foods that I shouldn't.
Nope, I don't drink too much iced tea or anything like that.
No.
No, it's like my sixth one of these. No. So, for those people who are maybe a little type A, a little hardworking, maybe juggling kids and schooling and work, and they're writing their book and they're doing their podcast. Oh God, that is us, isn't it? What do we tell these people to do? What is that first tip of self-care?
First tip of self-care? I think probably one of them is just to stop, right? Because I see so many people that are just running around. Like you said, we get life becomes so busy, right? And when you talk to people and you say, so how you doing? Oh, I'm so busy, right? And I almost think like sometimes people think it's a badge of courage, like, oh, I'm important because I'm so busy, right? Uh-huh. And so I think one of the things that I would say is just stop for a minute, right? Unplug, even if it's just for 15 minutes. One of the things, we talked about, one of the things I try to do is meditate for about 15 minutes a day. It's only 15 minutes, but what it does is it requires me for 15 minutes to turn off the technology, to, shut everything else out and just breathe and relax for 15 minutes. Uh-huh. And I think sometimes, again, we get so busy, we have so many things to do that we don't take that time for ourselves. So just stop and it may not be, meditation, it may be something else, but stop and take at least a few minutes of time for yourself as well. So what are some other things that they probably should be doing?
Yeah, I'm actually going to just kind of chime in with what you just said, because I do a lot of studying with Eckhart Tolle. Mm-hmm. And I was watching his live stream last night from Greece. And this woman, it was question time, and this woman got up, and you could have just put her, like my face on her, because it was just the exact same thing. She's like, look, I suffer from FOMO. And a couple people in the audience started laughing, and she said, fear of missing out, which apparently Eckhart Tolle had not heard of before. So he's like, what a strange condition. And she said, I'm a doer. I'm go. I want to try the next thing. I want to jump off the next cliff. And I'm listening. I'm like literally just laughing. I'm on my headset laughing. My husband's like, what is she watching? But it's true. I'm that way. And busy for a lot of people has definitely become a badge of honor. Just because you're busy doing doesn't mean you're actually accomplishing something, doesn't mean you're successful. It means you're busy. And his advice to her, and this was just so brilliant, and I'm so glad I watched this section of it, was, can you have being in the doing? Because we're human beings. We're not human doing. And it's okay to do stuff. But if you get so lost in the doing and you're not being, what are you shooting for? And he said the problem with doing is when you're only looking at that as a means to some future. But, the future never comes, because once that future arrives, it's now again.
Present.
And you're off to that next future. And he said, what you're actually missing out on is the present moment if you're constantly using these doing steps to get you to that next imagined, thought-formed future. And I thought about that I sat with that for a second, and I almost teared up. I'm like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. You're so busy running from thing to thing to thing. Are you actually enjoying this? Are you actually enjoying this? And when I finished my PhD years ago, I got my diploma in the mail, and I had one client who was here, and I waved my diploma. I went, "Oh my God, I got my diploma." And she goes, "Oh my God, that's congratulations. That's so great." And I said, "Yeah, okay, so now I can write my book." And she said, "Kathy, stop it." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "You just shit all over your PhD.
Yeah.
Can you take a minute to enjoy the fact that you just got your flipping diploma in the mail? You're just off to the next thing." And I went, "Oh my God, you're totally right." So the doing is awesome, but are you being in the doing? So to talk about what you said with the meditation and taking that time and stopping, you can't just be, because then you just sit there all the time.
Right.
But he even said that. He goes, "You can't just do being, because that doesn't work." But it is that, can you have being in the doing? And to me, that was just the wisest thing. So I wanted to toss that in with what you said, because it just
No, well, it's great. And so we'll keep bouncing off of this too. As you were talking there, I was thinking about mindfulness, because like you were talking about, so much of the time we're looking forward, we're looking to the next thing, just like you said, "Oh, I did the PhD. Now I can forget about that. Now I got to go focus on my book. I got to focus on, whatever else." And I'm the same way, right? Because I'm a planner. I'm always kind of thinking about, what is next. And as humans, it's interesting because when you think about time, there's the past, the present, and the future that we usually talk about, right? But we're only always in the present. The past is just memories, right? And so if we're focusing on the past and we're thinking about the good things, then that's good, right? I mean, when you're reminiscing, and sometimes we need that. If you're focusing on the bad, then sometimes you're kind of freaking yourself out. You're getting yourself down. And if we're focused too much on the future and always living in the future, always expecting the next thing, we're never really enjoying what's going on, right? There's that whole idea, stop and smell the roses. And a lot of times I forget to do that. And so I've really been trying to work on myself, especially this last year, with that, of trying to be more in the present. One of the people I know, he said, the present is a gift. And if you think about the word, present, is a present? Well, the present is a gift as well. Yeah. That, as we kind of focus on what's around us, what's going on right now, we can really get a lot of enjoyment, in what we're currently actually doing. So,
yeah. And the present is all there is. And in looking at a practical aspect of that is communication. If someone is talking to you, whether it's a colleague or your spouse or your kids, and you're projecting off into some thought form someplace else, you're not actually present with that person. And I had done this really scientific survey. I asked my friends on Facebook what the key to communication, it was very scientific, what the key to communication was. And most people said listening. Sure, which is true. And if you ask the Google, what is the key to communication, it often comes up listening, at least in the top 5. But you can't hear if you're not here. You cannot be present and truly communicating with that other being if your part of you is someplace else. Either, "Oh, well, I know what they're going to say," because they always end that sentence that way, and then you've already formed your opinion on that. Mm-hmm. Or you're getting defensive, or you're getting judgy, or you're thinking about lunch, or you're thinking about, oh, I have a joke that would go great here, which is sometimes where my mind goes. It's really funny right now. But that is unfair to you and them. And I see so much conflict happening in businesses and in teams because of that communication breakdown. I know we're going to talk about self-care, but heck, let's talk about communication. Because do you know what you want? Do you know how to communicate that? And frankly, that goes into self-care, because if you can't communicate your needs effectively, if you can't communicate what you really want, your needs aren't going to get met. Yeah. Even with yourself. I mean, I think sometimes we're so dishonest with ourselves about what we need to be at our optimum. So I think that mindfulness and that presence, and I had a client once that said, if you have one foot in the past and one foot in the future, you end up pissing all over the present.
It's a great visual too, right?
Well, yeah, I'll find a graphic for that. But no. But it's true. It's like, here is all we have, and we're shortchanging ourselves from these experiences and those around us if we're not here and now. Be here now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because it's yeah,
Yeah, just yeah,
just right?
just yeah.
Because
Yeah, I mean that's it. That's there's nothing else to say about that. I mean, it's just that is just a basis of everything, is that being present and knowing what you need. And part of that is that stopping and that introspection. And one thing that I encourage everybody to do is take a couple minutes in the morning, whether it's maybe you're in the shower, brushing your teeth before you even get out of bed, and do a quick scan of your body. How am I feeling today? Does my ankle still hurt? Is my shoulder tight? Do I have I woke up this morning with a headache and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized, oh, I was a little bit tense. I was probably grinding my teeth or clenching my jaw in the night. And so I did a little bit of like face and head massage and the headache went away. I didn't need to grab a pill. I didn't need to call my doctor. I needed to pause for just a moment and say, what is happening in my body? And I don't know when the last time was you rented a car, but the little person brings their little clipboard and the little diagram of the car, and you walk around it and you, oh, there's a ding there. Oh, there's a chip there. Oh, there, that headlight's broken. We look at our rental cars with more attention than we look at our own bodies, because we're not getting charged for that ding. We didn't do that. But shouldn't we have at least as much respect for our own bodies and knowing what is going wrong and what is going right, so that when you go to your doctor, when you go to your massage therapist, your acupuncturist, and they say, how are you? You have a better answer than, oh, all right.
Yep.
Which I get every day in my office. How are you feeling? Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then why are you here? Like, what can I help you with? And so unless we know ourselves, we're not going to be productive and we're not going to be of any use to anyone else. So take that moment to walk around your own car and see what's going on in your body.
Well, because I think it's interesting because, like you said, the with your headache this morning, right? Actually stopping, taking a little bit of time to do that body scan and figure out what's going on, taking the time, to give yourself a little bit of the massage, do some stretching, is going to make you much more productive today. Right. Where a lot of times people would just say, oh man, I have a headache. I just got to work through this. And you keep kind of going and the headache's getting worse. And maybe the stress is getting worse. And, you're way less productive during the day than you could have been. Plus you're in pain, and it kind of reminds me, the old story, because Stephen Covey used to talk about, one of his principles was sharpening the saw. And he told a story about, two old lumberjacks, that are out and they're having a tree cutting contest, and they've got the old saws, so this is all manual. This is old time frontier kind of stuff. Right. And so they both start off with their saws and they just start sawing away and going as fast as they can, because the goal is to try to cut down more trees than the other guy. And so, they're going along, and then all of a sudden one of the guys stops and sits down, picks up a file, and he starts filing his saw, sharpening his saw. And everybody's looking at him like, dude, are you crazy? This other guy's kicking your butt right now. He's like, yeah, I know. And he just keeps sharpening the saw, and then he gets back up and he goes to it. Well, the one guy just continued to saw all day long. And as his saw got duller and duller, it was harder and harder for him to be able to cut through the tree. The other guy that stopped, took the time, sharpened his saw, right? That was the one who ended up being able to cut more trees. And so, your example that you talked about with your headache this morning, taking that little bit of time, and some people go, oh, well, I don't have the time to do that. Right. But taking the extra time will help provide you with what you need. And it kind of reminds me another story that kind of popped in my head. There was a story about a guy who's really busy, and he goes to this, a Buddhist monk. And he says, I'm just so busy, and I'm so important. And, how can I, get all this stuff done that I need to do, And so the monk looks at him and he says, oh, well, you need to meditate every day for 30 minutes. And the guy goes, are you kidding? I don't have 30 minutes each day to be able to meditate. And the monk goes, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. You should meditate for an hour each day then. Right. So, because the idea is, the more busy we are, probably the more important it is for us to take that little bit of time, sharpen the saw, be mindful, be in the moment, and then go back and actually do what you need to do. Taking a 5-minute break it increases your productivity significantly.
Absolutely. And I have seen some of the companies that I go into and some of the clients that I've talked to, they're encouraged not to take those breaks. They're encouraged to power through and go, go, go and eat your lunch at your desk. Don't spill on your keyboard, but you have to sit there and you can't move and all this stuff. And I agree with you. We have to take that time. And I have so many clients and so many people in some of my workshops who say, I don't have time. Well, sure you do. You get 24 hours. I get 24 hours. You choose what you put in that 24 hours. So do you spend 2 hours with your beer on the couch at night watching Game of Thrones?
Which is a good thing.
I mean, okay, never seen it. Sure, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not a beer person either, so none of that's
No.
going to appeal to me. But what are you choosing to do with your time?
Right.
Did you just spend a half an hour on the internet looking at people of Walmart? Or did you start to read the news and then you get sucked down that rabbit hole of now you're 30 stories in reading about what 45 did today? We choose, we have a choice of where we put our focus, where we put our attention, just as what we put in our body. If we're living off diet sodas and donuts and, Pop-Tarts and cookies, and we're going to pay the price for that. And same thing if you put horrible things into your car's not going to run as well. And we treat our vehicles better than we treat our vehicles. We only get one of these. You don't get to trade this in a couple of years for the latest model. That would be fabulous. I'm sure they're getting really close to that. But we don't have that ability yet. So with those 24 hours that you have, you choose what you put into those blocks of time. And I encourage you to make a different choice, to make sure you're drinking enough water, to not overindulge in sugary, salty, processed foods and MSG and GMOs. I mean, we could do an entire episode on nutrition, but it's like we ultimately have a choice. And so take advantage of that choice. Make those choices that are going to be the best for you, not only for your own personal health, but for your productivity. We want you to succeed. This is why we're doing this podcast. And part of that is taking care of your vehicle, of sharpening your saw. And I've never heard that story. I love that.
You haven't heard that story before? Yeah.
No, that was such a great, because it's true. We can't work with inefficient tools. You aren't still using your very first PC from the 80s. I guarantee you, people aren't trying to function. My dad still has a flip phone, but that's a whole other thing.
Hey, so does mine, actually. But
it's a dad thing, I guess. Yeah. But it's about upgrading.
Yeah.
Well, and the latest technology. Let's upgrade ourselves.
And I think it's important what you said too, because people say, I don't have time. It's not about having time. It's about taking time, right? Because like you said, we all have 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. How you choose or taking the time to do those things that are important for you, that are important for your self-care is good. And so like you said, watch what you're putting into your body physically. Drink enough water, make sure that we're not eating a bunch of garbage, because garbage in affects our body. But the same thing too, even with, the things that we're consuming that are mental, right? And so like you said, if you hop on and start looking at the news and you start going down the rabbit hole and, oh my gosh, this is such a horrible place to live and everything's going to shit, it takes you down that rabbit hole, as opposed to feeding your mind with beautiful, positive things, right? And a lot of the people that I work with are kind of in jobs where it's kind of negative. They get to see the worst in society, and so sometimes they get to be very cynical about the world. And every so often, I have to go, okay, just a minute, time out, right? You realize, right, that you guys are dealing with, less than 1% of the population. And those people really are pieces of shit, a lot of them, right? But there's 99.9% of the other people in the world that are beautiful. This is a wonderful place. Stop and smell those roses, because there's roses out there. Yeah. And it's actually interesting. I met a lady who was, she was a server in the restaurant, and somebody asked her, so what do you do when you're not a server? And she said, well, I love taking urban photography. And we're like, what do you mean? And she goes around in the LA area and finds examples of nature in urban settings. And
Nice.
so she takes pictures of like this little sprout coming up through a crack
Hmm.
in the sidewalk, and as we're mindful, as we kind of stop, again, and look around at where we are, there's a lot of really beautiful things around us. And it just reminds me, in my backyard, on my patio, we've got these birds of paradise flowers out there. They're out in bloom right now. And we get a lot of hummingbirds that come in. And so I love just sitting there and watching the hummingbirds, because I think they're really cool little animals, flittering around, going back and forth. And we had some friends staying with us this other weekend, and they just love hummingbirds. I mean, I love sitting there watching them, but I learned all kinds of stuff about hummingbirds. And what I see them doing in my backyard that you don't see a lot is the hummingbirds will actually stop, and they actually land on the birds of paradise and they stop. Okay. And so that's what my friend brought up. And she's like, to me, this is like a sign that, when I get feeling like I'm going crazy, and hummingbirds have like the highest metabolism, I think, of any animal in the world, something like that. They're just always going.
Hmm.
But hummingbirds take the time to stop and sit too.
Yeah.
And so if they can do it, we can do it, and we should be doing it as well. And that is going to lead back to taking care of ourselves, which is the self-care that we need. Because if we let our battery get drained, we can't take care of other people around us too.
Yeah. So right now, everybody take a deep breath. Right, take another one. Just that feels kind of good.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
We don't stop and consciously breathe. Yeah. And with that, I think we should leave everybody with that breath. So everybody, when you stop listening to us in 10 seconds, just breathe a little bit before you move on to the next thing. Maybe close your eyes, unless you're in the car. That's causes a whole other set of problems. Don't do that. But take that moment just right now when we're off the air, and just breathe and just check in with your body. Be kind to each other. Smell those roses. I don't care what religion you subscribe to. The bottom line is love each other, love yourself, and be kind to people. So I think that's a good place to leave it. I'm Kathy Gruver, and my website's kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. You can reach me at jasonmefford.com.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time.